Thank you, everybody, for joining our panel today on HR, a digital transformation business partner. I have two wonderful panelists today, Elatia and Andrew, and I'd love for them to introduce themselves and hear a little bit about why they were compelled to specifically participate in this panel. So, Elatia, I'll hand it off to you.
Amazing. Well, Talie, thank you so much. I am excited to be here with the two of you and with our new friends who are joining our conversation here. My name is Elatia Abate, and I am an entrepreneur, an expert in the space of human capital and the future of work. Before I left the corporate world now about 6.5 years ago, I had spent most of my career in some way, shape, or form recruiting, scouting, hiring, finding talent all over the world. I ran global recruiting for Anheuser-Busch InBev. I joined them shortly after the merger with Anheuser-Busch. Then I moved over to Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal into a similar role, and I left as a VP of HR. And initially I left to solve the problem of why are so many of us so disengaged at work? And in the space of that, began to see these macro trends related to the future of work that had me wondering, how might we empower success in the face of all of this disruption? What are we going to do with all the people? And so I've spent the last 3.5 years literally with my life dedicated to answering these questions. You can see the TED Talk on that later. And today I work with companies that range in size from early stage startups to Fortune 500s in the space of future of work, and helping people understand the business models, how talent is going to shift, and really, again, anchoring in that question, how are we going to empower people and their success in the face of all of this disruption?
Awesome. Thank you. Andrew, handing it off to you.
So hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Saidy. I currently lead talent digitization at Schneider Electric. As of yesterday, I also lead employer branding globally, as well as university relations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. A bigger portfolio of HR topics. So what does talent digitization mean? So Schneider Electric, we're a large conglomerate. We're about 140,000 employees. So digital is definitely of the essence. We're trying to bring AI, machine learning, new technologies to our HR ecosystem. And all that starts from the business partnering. So how can digital HR partner with the business in order to advance our business and make sure that we can keep growing in a more efficient, optimized way? So I'm very excited to be here. My bread and butter is digital and HR. I've been in HR for many years. Also, I mean, Elatia, I don't think we went through all that last time we spoke, but also in talent acquisition, also in HR business partnering, so a very similar path as well, always in the corporate world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. So, Andrew, I actually want to start off by asking a question on something you mentioned, which was being that business partner and using the digital transformation that's occurring in HR to be an effective business partner. So can you speak to your experience in doing so, and what is your life like now, being able to leverage technology and impact business outcomes?
Sure. I mean, I think we got to go back a few years in time for where HR, I think HR has come into different transformation in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, 30 years ago or 20 years ago, it was merely personnel where, you have filing, cabinets, and employee records. And then there was the business partner where the HR had to be a consultant and where the HR had to be a coach. And I think now, maybe 2-3 years ago, and this is definitely going to continue, HR is increasingly becoming a technology and digital partner. There is a lot of digital transformation is happening everywhere around us. We're on our cell phones. We do everything now on mobile. AI is everywhere in our life, whether we know it or not. Most people don't, but then it is everywhere. And now that is also being infused in HR. So I think the role of the HR business partner is changing, and now we need to become more and more digital and digitally savvy in order to consult the business on how can we digitally advance and grow the business together. And to do that, I think we need to reskill our HR colleagues. We need to have a different mindset. We need to look at challenges in a different perspective than the traditional one that we've always looked at. So it's an exciting space. It's an exciting space for renewal and doing things differently.
Awesome. And Elatia, in the same vein, I've heard you speak of the fourth industrial revolution that we're in right now. So I'd love to hear more about that, how you've coined that term and what that means for HR practitioners and businesses today.
Yeah, and what it means for all of us. So we are on the precipice of the fourth industrial revolution. And when we look at industrial revolutions over history, the first one being mechanical, the second one being electrical, the third one being the digital transformation, which we're sort of moving our way into this fourth one, which is all about convergence, where the physical and virtual worlds melt together, where technological and biological worlds melt together. We have ubiquitous internet, the Internet of Things. And this massive shift is bringing us to that same dynamic that we've had over all of the industrial revolutions, which is where this whole future of work and digital transformation piece comes in, which is, what's the economic dynamic? When an industrial revolution occurs, there's massive disruption thanks to the new technologies and new capabilities that we have, which is exciting. But in the short term, what that means is that productivity drops for individuals whose jobs get lost because of that technology. But over time, what happens is that everybody grows, productivity grows, and people in general are better off. The difference with what's happening this time is that disruption is occurring at an exponential rate, and the catch-up that's been here, which actually was linear and could even take up to 3 generations, the catch-up is still occurring at a linear rate, but that disruption is happening at an exponential rate. So the call for HR and what we're going to do with people and how we begin to shift our business models as we support the business moving forward comes front and center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that. And what are some of the ways that we can perhaps mitigate that productivity disruption that we might face? Is there anything that we can do to be proactive as we embrace this digital transformation?
Only always. Only always, right? The fundamental question in this case isn't, is it going to happen? It's a matter, it's already happening. And this is one of those things when we talk about digital transformation, at least as I do in the context of the future of work, future makes it sound or feel like it's out here in a space that isn't happening yet. But what's really occurring is it's all present in our reality today. As Andrew, as you were saying, this idea that it's happening right now and now, and the impact is right now. And so making a big shift, one of the distinctions that I like to talk about, that the past of work was a world of or I worked in HR, or I worked in the business, or we laid people off, or we do something about it. And the future of work is a space of and. So this is where things like upskilling and outskilling come into place. So rather than laying off 35,000 employees at a swath, because if this continues to happen at scale around the globe, the economic impact is going to be negative. How might we outskill and upskill people so that they don't lose jobs? Or how might we upskill them inside of our organizations to mitigate the negative economic impact of people leaving? So that's sort of the easiest way to dive into this, and then I'll leave it there and let you move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Andrew, I mean, speaking to that, what's your experience been in facing this digital disruption, and can you speak to any of the challenges you might have had in being able to affect change and add value whilst this disruption is occurring?
Sure. I mean, I think like every change is hard, and especially in an organization like ours, with we have a very high retention culture where people start with Schneider and stay with Schneider. I have colleagues that have been here for 30 and 40 and 45 years. So that makes change even harder because you've done the things the way you've always done, and you want to continue doing that. So we deal with that change resistance in various ways. I think one of the most successful ones are, for me, it's really two things. The first one is education. You don't want to change unless you know what's in it for you, especially with digital. I remember, I mean, maybe 15 years ago when we started saying, well, now you're going to be working on the internet, and now you're going to be doing this, and we're like, no, I just want to do it I would want to write it down on my notebook. So no one writes things on notebooks anymore. But that's, the why. I think the why is very important, which is we need to tell our employees, why are we changing? Why do you not submit CVs anymore to hiring managers? Why do you go on a platform that uses AI to match you with the right position for you? Selling. I think that's one. The second one is leadership commitment, especially in organizations like ours, where we're 140,000 employees. It's pretty big. The commitment from leadership and the top-down kind of promotion of these digital innovations is very, very essential. So for all of our colleagues out there and our friends watching, I think we should not be underestimating leadership commitment and promotion of these digital disruptions. So if you have these two, between education and leadership support, I think the disruption and the change is attenuated, and you can do something in that space.
Great. Yeah, and speaking to that, how do you get that support from leadership? How do you get that buy-in and show the ROI of the digital disruption or the digital transformation?
Yeah, that is a very good rebound question. Thank you. How do you get that? I mean, everyone is, different things make different people tick. Because when you're talking to a supervisor in a plant, talking to them about the bottom line and the EPS on our the share price and all of that is not going to mean anything, because for them it's a different, they're in a different world. And same, I mean, talking to one of our executives about things on the plant probably would not resonate. So I think return on investment is essential. How much are we spending, and what is the return on that? I think this is the key to any leadership support, because at the end of the day, it all boils down to returns and profits and bottom line and top line. And you know what? I think a lot of us in HR, and maybe this is where we need some reskilling and upskilling, we talk a lot in terms of people and emotions and how are people going to feel about it. And it does not I mean, I'm sure it resonates with many leaders, but with a lot of executives, all this talk does not resonate. We really need to reskill ourselves as HR folks and focus more on numbers and data and return on investment.
Awesome. And Elatia, did you want to speak to that or comment on anything in regards to what Andrew said?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what I hear is the common theme through that is speaking in, so the why, how do you get buy-in from everybody around this? And I find the important thing is understanding the language that your audience is speaking and then speaking into that language. It's the same way for this conversation here. I'm bringing a lens of the future of work, but if I go to a SHRM conference and I speak from the stage there, it's a different one versus if I go into a room of CEOs of companies that do financial services. Totally same core message, but the language that we use, I find needs to be adapted to the audience so that the outcome that we want to have is created. And this is where I think that there's a distinction that I like to use. It's like, do we want to be right, or do we want to get the results? And so I can be, in my mind, right about the HR way or lens of doing things. But if that's not speaking to the business, then that's on me to figure out how to ensure that I'm driving those results.
Awesome. Thank you. And, you know, something that I picked up in what you were saying is a mindset, right? You have to speak to your audience. How do you get them to get on the same page and share in the mindset that you have? So as part of the digital transformation and the disruption that's occurring, how important is the psychological or philosophical shift in how we approach HR and business practices to make sure that we add, maximize value for the business?
I think if we're going to do 80-20 rule, it's 80% of it. If you can get the mindset piece right on this, all of the rest of it falls into place. And mindset being that the component of, we can't change that the digital transformation is here and that it's coming, that the market is this way. So since it is, what do we want to create? And then really being able to flex that muscle of resilience underneath that umbrella of mindset, I think is, if sitting in an HR executive seat or sitting in a CEO seat, this is the thing this is one of the competencies, we'll call it, that runs through executive level, mid-level, and junior level folks that if I were sitting in that seat and advising companies as I do in my day-to-day, that's the training that even goes beyond the digital upskilling and how do I utilize this technology. That's helping people get into the mindset that things are changing, and so how can I adapt better, more quickly, and more powerfully in the face of that.
Awesome. Thank you. And Andrew, did you want to comment further on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, what I would add to that is a few years ago, maybe 7-10 years and back, all companies, at least the successful ones, have been telling their R&D centers, they've been telling their executives, we need you to think digital. Think about an app for a bank and think about this for that and everything. We want you all to think digital. And yet, we haven't been saying the same to our HR colleagues, that we want you to think digital. First thing, how can we digitize this? How can we make sure that this is a digital transformation that our employees can benefit from in order for customers to benefit from? Because at the end of the day, we're all working for our customers. And I think these discussions and shifts in mindset, and I like what you said about, it's the psychology, it's a mindset. That mindset shift has to happen. I don't know for many companies, but for Schneider, that shift in mindset has definitely happened on the R&D front, has definitely happened on the product front, on the customer front. Now we're all about VR and AI and thinking digital and IoT. Of course, Elatia, you know that IoT is our bread and butter at Schneider. So why has this not translated to HR? We need HR to be more digital and more a digital partner in this disruption.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to flip that question back at you. Why has it not? Why has it not been?
Your questions, because you're flipping them all back and sending them.
Do you want me to answer them? But do either of you want to speak to why there might have been this delay in getting HR on board with the digital transformation?
So I think it's a mindset thing. Most things end up coming back to this piece, and it's rooted in that distinction between and or. There's even in the phrase HR business partner, inside of that is implied that there is a separation from the business. So it is, or you are in HR or you are in the business, and therefore the logic that drives each of those is separate. And so in language creates our reality, and moving away from this notion that we are not a part of the business. And in fact, and this, as the C-suite and functional areas shift in the face of the future of work, the HR seat has a leading, driving force in ensuring productivity and ensuring top and bottom line growth through some of these components of psychology, resilience, ability to face that. But that's where I see the biggest challenges in that mindset piece. We aren't that, we're people. So let them be digital and we're going to sit back here. But when the entire world outside of the four walls of our company is working with phones that deliver everything on demand, if our HR business practices are not also delivering everything on demand, there's a disconnect between the rest of the world and what we're able to deliver.
Makes total sense. And in what ways has the digital transformation been really effective in terms of the different facets of HR? Is it with recruiting? Is it with talent management and performance management? In what ways have we seen success? And then also on the flip side, in what ways can we improve leveraging the digital transformation to be more effective?
Andrew, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think there are many success stories for HR digital transformation. I think, of course, you mentioned a few, which is around recruitment. I think there, in the last 2-3 years, the forays that have been done in recruitment and talent acquisition, from AI recruiting to the SMS recruiting to the chatbots recruiting. I think there's an AI in interviewing. I know that one of the tools that we use in Schneider uses AI in video interviews and AI in interviews online. So I think there is a lot that has been done in that space and other spaces. So I think there is a lot out there. Now, where we are slightly behind, I think as a HR group, not necessarily as an organization, is around the employee experience. Because in most companies, what you see happening is we think about this piece and that piece and another piece, but we don't connect all of them together in terms of what is the employee experience? How easy is it for an employee to toggle from one system to the other? And employee experience can go all the way to visuals and the branding, and are employees feeling that they're part of the same ecosystem, or every time that they go to a different system, they feel a different feel and efficacy and all of that. So there is a long way to go, I think, in terms of digital transformations for companies. And of course, some companies are more advanced than others. But the one area is definitely having the employee at the heart of these transformations. I feel that a lot of HR departments in many companies do that in order to support management, or do that in order to support an executive. If you do that when you're on the product side, you would be fired, because you're always told that everything you do has to start with the customer.
Right.
Everything we do should start with the employee in mind. Right. So I think this is also another shift that we need to have.
Yeah, employees as our internal customers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I think when I see one of the ways in bringing to recruiting some of this digital transformation shift in mindset, to your point, Andrew, if we can understand that if there's a talent equation here, and companies are, I'll use the word loosely, consumers. Companies are consumers of talent. And all of us talent out in the world, we are consumers of opportunities and experiences. And that's what the company is providing us when we walk in the door: experiences to learn, experiences to contribute, experiences to grow. And this is where that shift in mindset to, as a business or as a part of the business, if HR could make that shift, when it does make that shift into understanding that all employees, whether they're in-house or whether we're recruiting them in now, are consumers of opportunities and experiences. And if what we're telling them out in the marketplace or through our employee communications doesn't match reality, then of course we're going to have dissatisfied customers. So making that shift there can be a really useful way of thinking about it. And then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's a place where, as an HR team, you can partner strongly with your marketing team. Imagine, this is an experience that I had both at Anheuser-Busch and at Dow Jones. You partner directly with the marketing team as you're creating your employer branding, as you're building your we'll call it a go-to-market strategy. Then you don't need to invent the wheel yourself. You've got a world-class team that's in-house, that's already creating all this stuff for you. Why not leverage them? You demonstrate that you're business savvy instead of articulating it. You show that you are, and then guess what? Many of these challenges that we have around HR doesn't get included, or we need a seat at the table, or these kinds of conversations dissipate because you prove your value by creating value.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Awesome. And if you were to advise, a brand new company or a brand new HR team, where should they start in terms of embracing this digital transformation? Like, what tools would they best utilize to impact the business and create that valuable partnership? And I see that the lights have just gone dim. Oh, there's a ghost in this room. Yes.
You know you're at a green company then.
Yeah, I mean, probably your motion sensor is not a Schneider motion sensor.
It's probably not. It's a WeWork motion sensor. So I can't speak to their capabilities. However, I'm sure Schneider has great sensors. But going back to the original question, what kind of advice would you offer to brand new companies, brand new HR professionals trying to embrace the change and deliver that value to stakeholders? Elatia, I'm going to call on you for this one.
Awesome. So I would, if I were advising an organization, in fact, I'm just wrapping up an advisory role right now. There are three, I like to do things in 3s and 5s. It just makes it easier to, for me anyway, to think about things. But there are 3 levels that you can think about digital transformation in, and then see how and where you sit inside of it. And the first level is kind of that macro level of strategy. What are the business models of the future? How are they different from what's occurring today? And what could my role be in helping the organization transition from where we are today to where it is that we're going? The second level is, so if we look at strategy, the second one, if we look at shape, like the shape of an organization. Before, we were looking at hierarchical models where, the pyramid, everybody knows what that looks like. And as we look and move to leadership of the future, that moves into an infinity model, where today, because let's just say we're going to talk about the future of work, I would be the leader of the project because I have more knowledge. And so my leadership would, in this space, so my leadership would show up here. But tomorrow, because we're talking about specific HR business partnering strategies, Andrew would be the leader. And so in our leadership roles, we need to be able to make that shift between today I'm the boss, tomorrow I need to be a good enough leader to step into second place and give the space for others to lead as well. So looking at the shape of the organization and how we can meet consumer needs and internal needs in this space. And then thirdly, the skills. So what is it that we need to know how to do, to execute, to program or not, or whatever those things. So we look at strategy, business strategy, the shape of the organization, and then the skills we need to get ourselves there.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Elatia said. I think it makes a lot of sense. One thing that I can add is, and that's based on experience. I was advising a friend of mine who works in a different company. So we recently launched at Schneider a career development and internal mobility platform that uses AI to match the supply and demand of talent. It's a very cool tool. It really uses AI to find you the best mentor, to find you the best project or stretch assignment, to find you the best role if you want to move a full-time role. It's very exciting, and you can read about it on the internet. And this friend of mine was so excited, like, okay, I need to meet this company and I want to launch this in my organization. And in the discussions, I'm like, yeah, but if you want to launch this, you got to have that and you got to have that, and they didn't. And I think the advice that I would give for someone who wants to start launching digital transformations is start with the basic. You got to make sure that you have a foundation in order for your digital transformations to happen. You can't start by providing your employees, a Lamborghini if you don't have fuel, because it won't roll. So you got to start with the basics and start building on that. You got to make sure that your basic systems are ones that are digitally, advanced and that your employees can use, like pay and like payroll and like talent acquisition, in order for you to keep bringing talent, and then move on to the more advanced digital transformations. If you don't mind, Talie, I see there is a very interesting question on the chat from Hilary, and another one from Cesar, actually. And that talks about bringing, experiences to minorities and aging groups and disability groups, the more underrepresented groups, to create buy-in. And I think a great way that we did it at Schneider is our open talent market, where, of course, we focus a lot on recruiting minorities and recruiting, underrepresented groups in our organization and D&I. And happy International Women's Day. I think everyone at Schneider this week is celebrating International Women's Week. We celebrated the whole week at Schneider. So I think there are many ways with digital in order to engage more with minorities and, with underrepresented groups, from hiring, where you remove bias, because a lot of these new digital tools have ways to remove bias and make sure that these differences that we have are masked. So you are hired based on your skills, but not based on, whether you're part of a underrepresented or overrepresented group, and also internally. So I think there's a lot of exciting things in this space, especially around D&I.
Awesome. And it seems like Cesar has a question as well. Aren't we all being pressed much more to transform technologically, digitally at a fast pace than to solidify first more basic business and people-centered principles such as vision, mission, values, and customer and employee satisfaction? So do either of you want to speak to that? Push pull. I know, Elatia, that was a term that you've used quite often. But do you want to speak to that tension? And
this tension is like one of the most exciting places to be, because the push me pull you dynamic is, if you remember the movie Dr. Dolittle, or if you ever read that book when you were a little kid, there's the two-headed llama. And when one head wants to walk one way, the other one gets pulled, and vice versa. So there's this push me pull you dynamic that occurs. And this is the challenge that is at the center of digital transformation, the future of work, talking about all of these things, which is, I have results that I need to give for Wall Street this quarter. I have sales I need to get in the door today. I have employees who are satisfied or less satisfied knocking on the door of my office right now. So there is the now that very much needs to be taken care of. And this doesn't, however, negate that there is this future that, by the way, is already here, that's coming with different rules, different ideas, different ways of thinking. And so if we're stuck in that or kind of mentality, it becomes, or I do this, or I do that. And the magic really is in that shift in mindset to, and how might we deliver what needs to be done now and translate these future trends into results today. And this is the beauty of the fourth industrial revolution and this age that we're moving into, is that things can shift at an exponential rate, which means we no longer need to develop our programs, our processes, and our technologies, or even roll them out in an incremental manner as we had to before. We can leapfrog stages of development thanks to the very technology that's disrupting us. So the push me pull you is real. It is the demand of every business owner, and there is a way to shift your thinking so that you capture these future trends and you turn them into results today.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love the idea of kind of taking out the word or and being able to do and this that is so fun. But I love the idea of taking out that or and being able to concurrently, focus on values and core vision, but also accelerate in terms of our digital transformation and realizing the benefits of that impact. So, and
Right.
Jean just said, and I hope
I
I
like
just said, sorry.
I like Gene's comment. I think digital, to go back to what Cesar was saying, definitely changes the dynamic from or to and, because yes, you need to focus on the basics, but sometimes these basics are digital. I mean, if your employees have an internet that is super slow, how do you expect them to focus on customers, and how do you expect them to be satisfied? If your employees don't get paid on time, or they don't know what they're paid because you don't have a digital system to manage that, then you can't expect them to be satisfied and then focus on your customers. So it is not an and, it is not an or, it really is an and. One leads to the other. Both can happen at the same time. We're always faced with priorities, but you shouldn't be prioritizing something because you think digital is more advanced. It could be basic.
You know, this reminds me of a really great management model that that I find useful in helping share, like, how do you balance all of this stuff? And there's a man named Ichak Adizes, and he's written many books, but one of them is called Mastering Change. And in it, he talks about the 4 different profiles of people who we all have on our teams. And each of us have preferences for being these kinds of people. There are what we'll call like a manager leader, or somebody who puts systems and processes into place. So these are a lot of times consulting types of folks, but these are the folks who make whatever it is that you're doing scalable. There are the producers. These are the people who are worried about getting sales in the door today. Then there's the accountants who are worried about, you know, like sort of numbers and processes. And then they're the entrepreneur types, who are people like me who are like, but the future's great and let's think about this thing and the next new thing. And the 4th type is the integrator. There's actually a role of someone who can help balance all of these. And so as you look at your teams and as you're looking at thinking about how to do this, looking at those 4 different kinds of roles can be incredibly useful.
That's very helpful, and a very unique perspective to think about. I never thought about it in that framework, so thank you for sharing. I know that there is a question from Renee, and Renee asked, in the time of constant change where the strategy of the business evolves all the time, how do we develop a talent strategy that can be ready for multiple future scenarios and possibilities?
Andrew, you want to start?
Andrew.
Question. I mean, that's always on the top of our mind as talent leaders in Schneider, and I guess many organizations. I think the one thing, of course, there are many things that you can do, but I think the one thing that you should focus on is really having a culture of learning. A lot of companies have great learning tools, but that doesn't mean that they have a great learning culture. Are your employees constantly upskilling and reskilling and making sure that they're always learning something new, and making sure that they're on the lookout for novelties that they could bring back and implement within your organization? Because you're right, the business evolves all the time, and so should your talents. And the best way for your talent to do that is learning. And learning doesn't have to be, face-to-face learning, doesn't have to be online learning. You can learn from a mentor, you can learn from a new job, you can learn on the job, you can learn from a small project. There are so many different ways of learning, but you got to have that culture of learning. And if you have that, then whatever, the scenarios thrown at you are, you can change and adapt and be agile. But it all starts with learning.
For sure. And so, how do you not? Sorry.
I'm looking at Elatia on the camera, and I feel like she wants to add something.
Oh, sorry. By all means, Elatia, please.
Oh no, I simply I'm so excited about what you're saying, Andrew, because learning is at the center of all of this. Learning and education is at the center of all of it. And when we talk about what will help us thrive and what will help our businesses thrive and how do we keep up with all of this stuff, I look at there's a mindset, education, and collaboration framework. Mindset being what we began the conversation with. How do we think about this, and how do we practice our resilience. The education piece, from as basic, I'll call it, as understanding what industries are in ascension and in decline, to this notion that you're talking about, Andrew, which is lifelong learning. Gone are the days of diploma and done. And we've shifted into this place of lifelong learning. We move away from subject matter experts into subject matter students. No matter how much we think we know about a thing, it's creating this learning mindset rooted in curiosity. And this is a fuel for companies thriving in the face of disruption, because when change happens, even in the moment that we're living in right now with coronavirus occurring, it can be a real shock, because now all of a sudden all the plans that we had about how business was going to work and what was going to happen and how our supply chains were going to be
Gone.
not working. And so rather than saying, oh, but I knew I had the right answers to this. Well, okay, you do want to be right, or do you want to be resilient? And in this case, is inviting us to be resilient. So that place of curiosity can be really helpful. So yeah, I love the lifelong learning piece.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, how do we know what to be curious about? I know that's kind of off topic here, but, in some ways, yes, we're talking about the future of work, and we have to prepare ourselves for it. Coronavirus being a perfect example of a bunch of events getting canceled, but Enrique having orchestrated all of this could happen without disruption. But how do we kind of predict that future and prepare accordingly?
Yeah, so the wonderful thing about the world that we live in is that there are all kinds of people around the world thinking about this stuff. There's a whole future of work community that's subdivided into everything from AI to business strategy to HR strategy to all this stuff. And so we begin to play the game. How might we thrive in the face of this? This is where design thinking and ironically, human-centered design around our strategies and our processes really comes into play. How might we continue to have X amount of revenue growth year over year while facing a logistical challenge of this size, scale, and scope?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I think sometimes you also got to take some bold bets and do things that you believe are gonna, big risk, big reward. And that's not always happening. I see a lot of companies just copying what other companies are doing, and sometimes it works. And I liked what you said, Talie, about Enrique doing this digitally. And when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind, especially going back to your question, how do we know what to do next, was the story of American Airlines and Delta Airlines with the 737 MAX. Every airline in the United States went on and bought the 737 MAX because it's the next big thing, except one airline, Delta. And they said, nope, we are going to buy something else because we think it's better. That is the future. Today, it's been a year and 2 months that all the 737 MAXs of all American airlines are grounded, and Delta is making big money. Their employees just got $1.2 billion in profit sharing. So I think you got to take a bold bet. You got to sometimes try something different, try something new, not necessarily what everyone else is doing. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So what I'm trying to say is there is no magic wand that's going to say, okay, this is next. This is what's coming next. You got to.
But it's in my pocket. The magic wand. Yes, no, that's true. There is no magic wand in my pocket. But that point totally resonates with me. There's no way of predicting, the future, but there are ways to, analyze the past, right? And be able to see what outcomes we don't want to see again, and know the outcomes that we do want to see, and then work towards them. So thank you for taking a stab at that. And just pivoting, Elatia, did you want to say anything on that? Sorry. Okay.
No, I think that's great.
I love this. So just pivoting a little bit here, and this is kind of a cliche question about, robots taking over the universe and, replacing all jobs, particularly HR jobs. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that's imminent and, I'm going to be displaced in 5 years? Or, how is that going to look from your point of view?
I started looking for a new job.
Well, I'm sure Schneider Electric was not very happy about that, unless you looked internally.
So
Elatia?
yeah, I love this. Like, well, I love all these questions because this is such an exciting thing to talk about, and then more importantly, to do something with. And one of the things, there's a fabulous book. It's a denser read, but it's by one of the co-authors of that Oxford study that came out in 2013. That was sort of that seminal 47% of jobs are going to be computerized or taken over by robots in the upcoming years. And this book is called The Technology Trap, and it walks through all of the history of all of the industrial revolutions to help us contextualize ourselves as we look at this disruption. And there are a couple of things that I find really useful there. First is Amara's law. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but essentially the idea is that technology and technological disruption in the short term is always much smaller than we think it's going to be, but over the longer term is much more disruptive than we think it's going to be. And the internet is a fabulous example of this. When it first came out as a component of the defense program, it wasn't consumer ready. It had all of the underlying capabilities, but it took decades for it to get us to the point where we are right now. So analogous things are happening with artificial intelligence, with blockchain, with all of these other things. So there's a short and long-term dance. And then as we think about our jobs, when we think about HR, the key distinction that this guy talks about in that book is the distinction between whether or not technologies are replacing or they are enabling. If they are enabling us to do our jobs better, removing some of the routine stuff, taking the boring parts away, fantastic. But if they're replacing, this is where, as a society, now this goes beyond the four walls of our business and into society, they are replacing jobs. Sometimes it can take, this is where I got that data point, sometimes it can take up to 3 generations for employment to swing back to where it was. And so being aware, this is where the education piece comes into play, being aware of how technology may or may not impact my job to help me prepare in the face of that.
Awesome.
And will it take HR jobs? It depends on which jobs they are. When it comes to data mining, when it comes to some of the more routine components of compensation and benefits and insurance and those kinds of things, absolutely. It's just a matter of time. Where the humans come into play, at least for the time being, until artificial intelligence gets smarter and more perceptive than we are, leading the psychological component of disruption, helping people practice this resilience, designing what the balance of human and artificial work partnerships look like. There's not yet, and we're not even close to having a computer that can help us do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Elatia. I think no one should be worried that, technology or artificial intelligence is going to take their job away. I think the only thing that takes your job away is you not doing a great job.
There.
So that's one. Two, I think, and I don't like to say AI is artificial intelligence. So what I like to refer to is it's more augmented intelligence, because there are things that technology is not going to be able to do. Technology is not going to sit here and coach one of my business leaders on their behaviors. AI is not going to be able to do that, at least for the next 20 or 30 years. The short run, medium run. So there is that. And I think the part that technology is going to be taken away from us is the heavy lifting that anyhow we do not enjoy. I mean, when you compare and contrast what we have today with what we had 20 years ago in terms of skill sets on the HR function, 20 years ago we had people with associate degrees, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different to today. Today, everyone on my team has a graduate degree. So factoring that in, there is a lot of heavy lifting. There is a lot of routine tasks that people with the more advanced education don't necessarily want to do. And by technology taking some of these things away, then they can focus on the more value-adding things. And this is where we as HR business partners can benefit the business more, because we're focusing on the things that add more value than sourcing through CVs. I mean, now all the CV sourcing is done by AI. No one reads CVs anymore in order to find that wonderful candidate. You have the AI reading 1,000 CVs and then spitting out 5 of them and saying, this is it. So we got to be, I mean, realistic about, no, technology is not going to take your job away. It's just going to augment it. And you got to keep upskilling and reskilling yourself in order for your job not to be taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Hillary made a great comment in the chat about how, you know, some of the automated processes within HR can be automated through technology. And that only allows, you know, humans in the HR function to deliver value in other ways, which I think goes along exactly with what you were saying, Andrew. And conscious that we do have 8 minutes left and want to make sure we do give enough time for questions. I do have a final question, which is, what is the future of work? What does the future of digital transformation look like for us, for businesses, for the workforce? Elatia, do you want to take a stab at that one?
The future of work. What is it?
Yeah.
What is it? What it's going to be
now?
which is now. So, like, you know, and that's the beauty of this part. The more we understand about the future, and even if we don't have 100% of the details worked out, if we can align our strategies, our actions, and our thinking with that, the transition will be so much easier. What do I see as the future of work? Even faster acceleration and change. The need to adapt and to be adaptable to shifting and constant and consistent disruptions in our lives, in our working places. And this really sits HR at the center of things. But more importantly than all of this, I think overarchingly what we're working toward and what all of the impact of this technology means for us, or can mean for us as a planet, is that we move away from a space where work is an activity that we do in order to receive money, and it returns to the act of creation that it was always meant to be. And so we move away from this notion of paycheck and into the creation of and the exercising of purpose. And that's what, for me, is the underlying piece of this. This is our opportunity as a planet to imagine if this planet even had, you know, a third of it thriving, fulfilling their purpose and the way that they want to choose to impact and utilize their lives. That's exciting.
That is exciting. And then we'd all have pins, just like Andrew, that said, I love my job.
Yes.
I love my job.
Yes. And Andrew, did you want to speak to that? You know, what your vision for the future of digital transformation in HR and what that means for businesses?
I mean, I feel I'm just going to repeat what I've been saying throughout this panel, which is I totally agree with Elatia. So I feel like
I love it.
Maybe I shouldn't be here. No, but I totally agree with Elatia. I think the future is now, and the future is what you make of it. Because at the end of the day, I think there is a lot of people out there looking at the next big thing. Why to keep looking for the next big thing where the next great thing is around us? I think there is a lot of things that we can do, and a lot of us in HR, sometimes we do not realize the impact that we have on the lives of our employees and our colleagues. And I think there is a lot of things that we can do now in order to have that purpose that Elatia was talking about, in order to make them feel included, in order to make them feel recognized and appreciated and part of, you know, this environment. And I mean environment, not necessarily like the environment, but a great environment, work environment that they're part of. So I think this is something that we need to focus on at the moment. How can we make sure that everyone is appreciated and everyone is involved and everyone feels recognized, rather than thinking of, how are we going to use AI in order to do payroll for something? That's great, but the only benefit of that is that you would save 1 or 2 compensation analysts' salary. But are you really affecting a change in the lives of all your employees? Probably not.
Right. And just to take that point home, why is it so important to, and this might be seemingly obvious, but why is it so important to change the lives of employees in a positive manner? Like, what is the value in caring for employees in terms of the bottom line?
I'm going to go first because otherwise I'm going to say I agree with Elatia. Why? I mean, this is a rhetoric question because there are so many reasons why employees, you should care. I mean, I see Jesse wrote on the chat, employees are our most valuable asset. I don't like to call employees assets because at the end of the day, assets are disposable. I think we need to make sure that our employees are committed, and we need to make sure that we are committed to our employees because it takes 2 to tango. When you share love, you get love back. I think this applies everywhere around us. In your personal life, why would it be different in an organization? Our employees, we owe them everything. Without our employees, there is no customer, there is no business, there is no research, there is no development, there is no HR. So we definitely have to make sure that they are taken care of in every way, shape, or form. So I think it's self-explanatory.
Awesome. Elatia, did you have any final comments on that?
No, the very first job that I had as a recruiter shortly out of college, I had the experience of placing I did C-level executive placements in large technology companies. And the first placement that I made, and you watch what happens, not only for the stock price of a company, but you watch what happens when the right person is in the right role and they, as a human being, start to flourish and become more of themselves and better of themselves. And even being a small piece in that, there's no better feeling in the world. So why do we put our employees first? Why do we put folks at the center of this? Because there's a possibility of being able to create the environment for that kind of experience for a 140,000 person organization, for a 200,000 person organization. And again, the ripple effect of having that many people engaged and flourishing in their workspaces, which is where they spend more time than anywhere else, the residual effects are astronomical. So that's the why. It's the magic.
Love it. And I agree with both Elatia and Andrew on all of the things that were said, and I really do appreciate your time. So thank you very much, and thank you to our audience for your questions and for your commentary, and just big thanks to Enrique, who, I don't know if the man sleeps, but he has made this happen, and it seems like it's a 24/7 conference, and I was watching it at 4 a.m. and I'm on it now. So yeah, thank you very much, and looking forward to the rest of the sessions.